welcome back to Muppets in Space, a Farscape rewatch podcast on the Incomparable Podcasting Network. Tonight, we are in Farscape's second ever three-part trilogy. This time we're doing the first two, which is Season 2, Episode 19, Liars, Guns, and Money, Part 1, told you, A Not So Simple Plan, and Episode 20, Liars, Guns, and Money, Part 2, with Friends Like These. I'm your host, Eric Scott, and joining me, as always, is my fellow co-host, who, being a Flirtian, would probably like a cooling rod in his head this time of year, Jason Johnson.
So I know when you came up with that intro, it was probably hot, but I'll tell you, after this week, a scaring would melt. I mean, it's ridiculous here. I think the heat index was like 108 or 115 or something today. It was crazy.
Yeah, last time I was in Florida in like June, July, it was like 100 plus. And like, nah, I'm good. I'll stay back up here.
I don't blame you this time of year. Won't trade you in the winter, though.
Yeah, well.
All like 3 months of it we get down here.
I used to like snow, and then I started driving, and then I hated snow. But anyway.
That's tonight's episode title. I hate snow.
Yeah, that's right. Snow. It gets everywhere. No, wait, that's sand. No, wait, never mind. Wrong franchise.
It does get everywhere. It just melts.
Yeah, so it's a self-correcting problem. All right, so like we said before, this is our second ever three-parter, and since we only do two at a time, we're going to be left with the exciting cliffhanger after episode 20 before we get to the final one here next time.
So be prepared for some suspense, right?
That's right. Unless you're, adventurous and watch ahead and then just catch up with us, but, we're going to be suspenseful for another couple weeks before we catch up on the last one, because that's how we roll. All right, so let's jump on into Season 2, Episode 19, Liars, Guns, and Money, Part 1, A Not So Simple Plan. So I'm guessing there's a plan involved. It's not very simple. So the crew have been following Nexus coordinates for 3 solar days in search of Stark, who Zan says she saw in a vision. Wait, didn't he die?
The Search for Stark was a better episode title, but anyway.
Farscape Season 2, The Search for Stark. The others are fed up and do not believe she saw him, because they saw him die 2 episodes ago. Dara wants to return to the slave auction to find his son. Finally, we're back to that plotline. Zan asks Crichton what he thinks, but before he can finish his sentence, Stark's image appears, and Pilot detects his shuttle, bringing it aboard. The crew go to meet him, and he tells Dargo he's done it. He's found a way to save his son. Dun, dun. Da, da, da. Which I'm guessing involves a not-so-simple plan. Crichton asks how he got here since he was dispersed. Stark says that when he was dispersed, he immediately traveled to get the maps and blueprints he has, and then reconstituted his physical shell and stole a ship. Oh, that's handy.
So, wait, he got the blueprints while he was incorporeal? Where does he store his blueprints? Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he said, so we'll take his word for it. I make no judgments. I don't know. He says that Jothee is being sold in a lot of 10,000 slaves, and the blueprints he has are for a shadow depository, what's more or less a criminal's bank. It's within range of a transport pod from their current location. Surprise! Aaron says that the last shadow depository she saw had more firepower than a Gamic base. But Stark says he has the door's motion detectors and the maps of its layout, so it shouldn't be a problem. Just one container in that depository would be enough wealth to buy the entire lot of slaves and make them all filthy rich. He then explains he got those plans from the designer, who he helped cross over to death, I guess, after he was reincorporated. Aaron says this would be a suicide mission, but Dargo says if it's the only way to save his son, they must consider it. Crichton says that it's not possible, and so does Gianna, but Dargo is getting upset that they won't even consider it. He asks Crichton if whenever he asks him to do something, if he ever questioned if it was possible or not.
See most of Season 1.
Yeah, and part of Season 2. So Dargo takes it upon himself to leave alone on a transport. Aaron and Crichton soon follow in her prowler. They go into the Shadow Depository and see Dargo looking around. They see a blue woman chatting with somebody, but Crichton instead sees Scorpius in his place. He's having visions again. As they walk through the depository, the weapons are detected, and the security man, Acor, is straight on the scene. Crichton quickly acts as if they had been testing the security, as they have something special to deposit. As Crichton talks to that guard, they spot Dargo breaching a door. After a brief scuffle, he's captured. Crichton says the security is weak when the blue woman comes up to him and says she knows Luxons, but Dargo is uncharacteristically intelligent. She says that he expects to be tortured, it's a dance, and they won't disappoint him. Back on Moya, Crichton is really mad at Stark, saying that he set Dargo up, but Stark says that it's all part of the plan to get Jothee back and get the money. He says that Dargo has breached security, so now while they're resetting the codes, he can link in. but he has to work very quickly. Crichton asks how they'll get Dargo back, and Stark says it's all part of the plan. Just relax, and it will work. Meanwhile, Zan and Chiana are plastering Rigel up to look like a statue.
As you do.
You know, they knock him out with the gas to suspend his bodily functions long enough to not be detected. Stark still has not gotten through the security, and Crichton says he's got less than an Rn left. Stark tells him to go away, do nothing. It's what Dargo says you do best. Crichton doesn't like that too much and pulls his pulse pistol and shoves it into Stark's head and asks Stark if Dargo really said that. Stark kind of sheepishly says no, and Crichton tells him to never lie to him again. Meanwhile, Zan and Chiana go into the depository. Zan dresses as a pirate, as you do, complete with an eye patch, of course,
R.
because you're a pirate, and Chiana as her assistant. She tells Acor to get his leader, and the blue woman appears and says she's Natira. Zan says she's Arala, and she hears that they've been having security problems. Her Luxon agent got halfway into the vault without them noticing. Natira scoffs and says he barely made it through the door, and asks how he got their codes. Zan just dismisses that and says it's not her job to plug her security holes. She just wants storage for one solar day. She brings in the Rigel statue, which passes the scans. She says it's a priceless work of art and that she wants her Luxon now. Natira gives him back, and Zan sends Chiana to take him back to the ship. Natira tells Zan that her assistants, Crichton and Aaron, must go to the observation lounge. Those are her rules. She then shows Zan the containment facility, and the containment she wants to put Rigel in, which shoots out from the back of the room. Crichton and Aaron enter the lounge. When Natira's people whisper, they suddenly leave. Crichton starts to hear Scorpius talking in his head. Remember that little neurochip? When Aaron spots the real Scorpius on a monitor, who says he has come for his property and wants to speak with Natira right away. A female nurse with Scorpius then changes his cooling rod, which Aaron and Crichton see.
So much for that secret.
Yep. Now they realize that Scorpius's scare in biology must mean he needs that suit he wears to keep his body from overheating. I'm sure that won't factor into anything coming up later. Meanwhile, Zan manages to leave Natira just before Scorpius gets to her, and they hug. Zan, Crichton, and Aaron return to Moya as Scorpius tells Natira why he's here. She thought he died when the Gamut base exploded, so she seized his goods. Because, hey, why not, right? She says she will provide him with the goods of equal value, but he says, nah, I'll take triple the value, and she eventually agrees. Back on Moya, Crichton is again mad at Stark for keeping it secret from them that Scorpius was holding something at the bank, despite Stark protesting he didn't know Scorpius would actually turn up. Uh-huh, sure. Crichton guesses that it's Scorpius's vault they're going to be stealing from, good bet, and accuses Stark of wanting revenge.
Another good bet.
Another good bet. Stark denies the claim, saying he's just here for Dargo's son and his people. Using Scorpius's wealth to free them is just a bonus. Aaron asks Pilot if Scorpius's command carrier was here, and Pilot says they did detect a small ship earlier, which Aaron assumes is a marauder. Stark modifies their comms to be encrypted and has a passkey to control all the depository's doors. Crichton wants more and gets Zan to concoct some paste that explodes when heated. Meanwhile, Natira tells Scorpius she has some borinium ingots for him, which are worth at least triple the value of his goods. Meanwhile, Crichton goes to see Dargo and they start to argue, but then Crichton says he didn't come here to fight, just to see how Dargo was. Meanwhile, back in the vault, Rigel has gotten free when Zan and Chiana come in with Crichton and Aaron to make the withdrawal. Rigel is busy switching the containers when Crichton sees Natira licking Scorpius on one of the monitors. Ew, and they leave the room. The container is retrieved and Rigel falls back inside. Crichton and Aaron go to Natira's room where Crichton attempts to smear the explosive paste on Scorpius's cooling rods that are just conveniently left behind. The neural chip in Crichton's head starts telling him to stop, causing John to fumble and stumble around, so Aaron has to do it instead. They manage to hide just as the Peacekeeper nurse comes back in and takes the rod and changes it in Scorpius's head. Natira says the ingots have been transferred to Scorpius's container, just as Zan and Chiana are retrieving the stolen goods. Scorpius retrieves his container and realizes there's nothing in here but empty boxes and a statue casing. Natira says it's that Delvian woman, and when she mentions that she was traveling with a Nabari, a Luxon, and two Sebastians, Scorpius realizes it's Crichton. They seal all the exits, and Stark's door opening device does not work. Surprise! Stark manages to jam the video signal and turns the device on for Crichton. Aaron says to get Zan, Rigel, and Chiana out, and she and Crichton will act as a diversion. Crichton again starts to hear Scorpius in his head and grabs Aaron, kissing her and trying to tell her that Scorpius did something to him. He wants to tell her how he feels about her, but the guards interrupt them.
Of course.
Of course, as you do. Aaron and Crichton manage to knock the guards out, though. Meanwhile, Scorpius's cooling rod starts to fail, and he tells Natira that if he gets Crichton, all she owes him is forgiven. Zan, Rigel, and Chiana get to the last door of the depository, but Stark has started to break up at thought of his plan failing. What now you do? It's been failing. But anyway, Duggar takes over, and Crichton again tries to tell Aaron how he feels, but Aaron says he doesn't, as she already knows. Scorpius is on his way to intercept them when Zan has to use her gas to knock out the oncoming guards. Duggar finally manages to get into their system and opens the door for them. Scorpius' nurse sees Scorpius in pain and wants to change his rod, but he doesn't let her. Meanwhile, Crichton is starting to seal all the doors behind them, and as he does, Braca, Scorpius' lieutenant, finds him, but Crichton knocks him out. But right behind him is Scorpius, who grabs John and pushes open the door. He tells Crichton that he put a chip in his brain. No kidding. A neural biotracer chip has been touching every aspect of his personality and memories. He even
That's
says
not
he's
concerning at all.
no, yeah, that's which we already knew that, but at least now we know everybody knows this. He says he's learned it's saved his life a few times since he escaped the Gamic base. So I guess he's got some kind of download or something going on. He knows what's going on somewhat with the chip. We'll see. Then Scorpius's cooling rod starts to burn him, and while he's holding Crichton still, his nurse takes out the cooling rod for him. But before she can put the new one in, it explodes, knocking her out. Scorpius says Crichton can't let him die any more than he can sacrifice Crichton. Scorpius gets him to change the rod for him, but Crichton manages to fight it off and throws the rod away, saying he'd rather die himself. He crawls away, leaving Scorpius writhing in pain, trying to reach the new rod. Back on Moya, Rigel's talking rather happily about their newfound wealth when Zan reminds him that they agreed to do nothing with it until they bought the slaves. Buzzkill. Stark apologizes for his behavior, but Zan says he did brilliantly. And Dargo even
What show was
says,
she watching?
yeah, right. Did you not notice the plan was not working? But even Dargo says he's eternally grateful. Stark's proven himself a worthy friend. Jana says that was nice, and Dargo says that the tortured soul just gave him a chance to save his son, to which Jana asks, what of the other tortured soul? Dargo says friends help each other, and Jana says friends also forgive. Meanwhile, Crichton tells Aaron about Scorpius' chip and says that it was hard to let him die. A part of him wishes that he'd saved him. He says he meant what he didn't get to say to her, and she holds him, saying she knows. Meanwhile, back in Moya's cargo hold, the ingots in the cargo bay suddenly come to life. To be continued. Dun, dun, dun. Some trivia about this episode. The trilogy title comes from the Warren Zevon song Lawyers, Guns, and Money. Didn't know that. The subtitle for this episode comes from a novel and Sam Raimi's film A Simple Plan, which, like this episode, featured a plan that was not simple at all. Paul Goddard, who played Stark, used Jack Nicholson's performance in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Brad Pitt's in 12 Monkeys as inspiration, because they crazy. Around 15 takes were needed for the John Scorpius scene involving the singing of the Star Spangled Banner, which had not even been scripted. And Anthony Winley, one of the producers, arranged a budget increase with the Jim Henson Company for these episodes. All right, so the first of our three-parter, Liars, Guns, and Money. What did you think?
So, I'd have to go back and look. I'm not sure what I had for this episode based on the title from last time, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't a bank job. It was a good start. I'd say probably weaker than the next one, but we'll get to that. And had some definitely redeeming qualities to it. And I'm going to comment that I'm not sure what the deal is with Stark.
Yeah, and I guess speaking of which, so yeah, he stayed dead for what, one episode? So,
Yeah, there's a lot of suspense built over that.
yeah, although I guess, I mean, pretty much he was right. He said he could probably survive dispersion, and well, here he is. He does kind of explain it a little better than before, but still, you kind of wonder what he really is or how his energy in his head works. Obviously, not all his people can do that because otherwise they wouldn't be over there being prisoners and be like, oh, we're prisoners. So, but then again, I'm fine with not knowing all the details because we don't really need to. As long as they explain it good enough or well enough. And, a little mystery is fun from time to time, right?
It is, and again, I'm fine not knowing the thing is with his head being massive energy ball or whatever it is. But I'm trying to remember if I just am misremembering because I have a terrible memory in case you haven't figured that out for me, not remembering everything episode to episode. But and I get that he survived the dispersion, but I'm not sure he's all there. Uh, he seems a little more or a little less sane than I think he was before. He seemed competent, I feel like, in the first introduction to him. And I feel like each time we see him, he's a little less, he's a little more spasmodic and erratic in his behavior.
Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, if you think about it, yeah, I mean, he seems to be getting more, I don't say unhinged, but more, yeah, more erratic. well, maybe emotional a little bit. I don't know. So maybe yeah, being. I mean, if he has some kind of energy thing that's taking human or corporeal form, maybe that's a stress or something on him, or I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out, but
He seemed competent in gamic base. I feel like, but then we had the issue. I mean, the whole reason he got dispersed was because he was trying to blow up the ship. And then this episode, his plans are kind of all over the place. So I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of an interesting character arc that I hope there's something to.
mhm. Yeah. So speaking of which, yeah, Stark did have this really incredibly detailed plan of how to rob the Shadow Depository. He
Which is a weird name for a bank, but go ahead.
yeah, it doesn't roll off the tongue. It's like I keep want to call it Shadow Repository, which I guess it is too, but whatever. Or just call it like Shadow Bank. But yeah, I mean, even with his excruciating level of detail, where he outlined every single step, or when he didn't, we'll I'll get that in a minute. But yeah, no one believes it's gonna work. They're like, that's great, but no, that's suicide. And Dargo doesn't want to hear that from everybody because, I mean, this is his son. I mean, they're doing this to get his son back, and no one wants to do it. It's like, here's this great plan. Nope, not doing it. Yeah, and he's like, okay, fine, I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, and as I think I've made pretty clear, I've repeatedly complained probably too much that my least favorite plot dynamic that they tend to keep going back to is the contention among the main crew. Contention with Stark as the outsider. I realize he's been with the crew for a little bit, but I don't mind as much. But at this point, Dargo and John are brothers and blah 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 blah, and yet we're immediately back to, oh, you didn't agree with me on this one decision. I hate you. I don't know. I just that's not my favorite plot point.
Yeah, or at least try to like workshop the plan. Like, okay, that's a good idea, Stark, but what about this? Or are you sure? Or have something. Now, granted, that makes for incredibly boring television, but but
Oh, you don't want to see the 3 hour special where they sit around and draw on a whiteboard?
yeah, that's probably in the fourth part that they cut out is the all the planning for the. But yeah,
I was
so
kind of hoping that this got an Ocean's 11 treatment, where at the end you find out that it was all deception and here's what really happened. In a set of cutscenes. But anyway,
although kind of in a way, like, was Dargo getting caught part of Stark's original plan? Because he didn't lead with that. He didn't even mention it. But then whenever it does happen, he's like, oh yeah, it's all part of the plan. Okay, now I got so many irons to get into the system. You're almost done. You got, oh, it's all part of the plan. Like, really? Do you know what you're doing at this point? I mean, now granted, he did use what happened to Dargo to get to know that they would reset their security codes. So, was it part of the plan? And if so, you might want to have mentioned that because maybe then the crew would have bought into it.
yeah, I tend to fall on the it wasn't, but either way, he's never going to admit to it. It was,
Right.
and the wind blew from a different direction. That was part of his plan.
Yeah, because that was hilarious. Like, oh, it's all according to plan. Hey, this is Scorpius stuff. All part of the plan. Like, everything's all part of the plan.
It's a good plan.
Yeah, the plan's solid. I spent, hours being a energy thing, getting plans and stuff, and look, it's solid. I got it. I'm like, okay, sure, buddy. Right?
See, now I want to see Stark with a cigar saying, "I love it when a plan comes together." But anyway,
Okay, now I'm thinking about who's who in the A team. A team's Farscape. Never, I'm not going there. We went there last time with.
oh
Okay,
yeah,
well, what? So Dargo's BA, right? Okay.
there's a video for that later. All right, we'll work
Yeah,
on it.
we'll have to workshop that later. Yeah, but anyway, we won't go there. So Stark's obviously howling mad at Marta. Anyway, and speaking of which, of course, Scorpius shows up because why not, right? And at least now we learn, or they learn that what we know that Scorpius needs a cooling rod because he's half Scaran and heats up, and that would really affect his Sebation half. It doesn't like heat, and apparently they saw it being changed, so they know that because they were like, "Ooh, gross." So John's got an awesome plan to handle that, where he gets Zan to whip up that little gel that I guess will explode when it gets too hot, and
I did like that plan. I thought that was
yeah,
really
I
well
mean
done.
it's smart. Unfortunately, because of that neurochip, he couldn't pull it off, and great acting by Ben to like kept shaking and not have his hand couldn't get to the thing, and it was he was like fighting his hand to get to the cooling rod, so that Aaron had to step in and do it. But I mean, you gotta think at this point because he hasn't mentioned the chip because he can't. But Aaron does know he's having visions of Scorpius, so she's got to know something's going on at this point.
I can't remember the specification. I want to say that the chip made him forget that the chip was in that it was a chip. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
I feel like there was something there where the chip blocked him remembering that the chip was there, so he didn't even know he had a chip to tell her about. And we'll get there, but I think that gets broken later.
Yeah, we'll mention that when we get to that point.
Yeah,
And he's told her that he sees Scorpius, and I'm sure he probably told her that in their extra life that they didn't have when back when Moy went through time or whatever. But that didn't happen, so don't remember that part. But anyway. And of course, as these things do, the plan goes totally sideways, and they have to improvise and improvise and a a lot to get away with the money, which they do. John and Scorpio meet, and John's plan works, so he thinks. He's almost blew up Scorpius, but because
yeah.
it's cooling. Go ahead.
Definitely the last we'll see of the nurse, right? Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, she was there, eyes open, on the floor, burned, dead. She's toast. We won't see her again. Then he manages to fight off the neurochip and crawls away with Scorpius yelling at him to come back here, and he's like, which I thought was hilarious. He's crawling away like in pain, screaming the Star Spangled Banner at the top of his lungs. That was fantastic. I loved it.
Yeah, probably redeemed the episode for me. I mean, not that it was a terrible episode, but it was just kind of meh for most of it, but the ending, man, I remember it very, very favorably. Just getting high marks for that ending. So well done on the acting between those two.
Yeah, it's good when the protagonist can have that like chemistry of I hate you, you hate me, and then when he's trying to beg him like please come back here, you have to help me. He's like crawling off. And even though it's part one of three, we do have a kind of happy ending, sort of. Everyone's happy, with Stark finally. Stark's, I guess, part of the crew, kind of. Even Dargo likes Stark now, which he,
Give it 10 minutes, but yeah,
yeah, well, things change. But even Dargo likes Stark right now, which he was going to kill him last episode or when Stark was in the prison. So it's progress. Everybody's getting friendly again. John and Aaron get some bonding time. They kind of, I guess he explains more of his. Well, he tries to explain more of his feelings, but she's like, I already know that. You don't have to explain it. So
yeah. Aaron's not into the feelings talk. That's for
yeah,
sure.
it's like I love you. I know. And then
Oh,
like
now we need a who at Star Wars to. Anyway, sorry, I'll stop
yeah,
now.
maybe after the season ender we'll no anyway. The special Farscape draft episode. No. But then, yeah, what we talked about just a second ago, yeah, John mentions that he's got a chip in his head to Aaron. So, like you said, he was blocked from doing it before, so now it doesn't work? Or maybe I'm gonna like headcanon, haha, a way that maybe
The
he,
nurse didn't laugh at that one.
yeah, right. She's not laughing anymore. Or Scorpius, apparently, right? But I'm gonna kind of think that I guess he thinks he's killed Scorpius. He's overwhelmed. He managed to avoid the compulsion to go help him. So for right now, he's in control, I guess. So he can maybe mention that he's got the chip in his head. I'm guessing.
Yeah, that or maybe the Scorpius telling him about it, right? So far, him knowing about the chip has come from the chip itself, and I think this is the first time that Scorpius has told him out loud that there's a chip in his head. So I'm guessing that that's why he's able to talk about it. But that's just my headcanon. So
Yeah, I mean it's because he had him by the throat and he's telling him all his evil plans, like of course they do when you're the evil genius. So yeah, so maybe that doesn't the neural chip program doesn't cover that, right? Oh, the boss told me I have a chip. Okay. But then, of course, our happy ending is somewhat ruined at the end when we cut to the cargo bay and one of the little ingots or whatever you want to call it of money sprouts a bunch of legs and burns its way out of the container. Oops.
yeah, they really need to start scanning cargo before they take it aboard, because at this point everything in the unknown region is a bug. Like this place is infested with bugs. Scan it all. I mean, just trust no cargo.
Yeah, because every piece of cargo that they put in the cargo bay winds up to like try to kill them later, except for the crackers. The crackers were fine,
But
because
they didn't matter.
they don't matter. Yeah, right. But yeah, so that's our big cliffhanger. So you ruin the happy ending because it's a three-parter. You can't have a happy ending at the first part because then why have parts two and three, right? So
Well, part one's you end part one with a mostly happy ending with a little bit of foreshadowing. It's episode two that has to be the downhill slump, right? It's got to be your empire.
yeah, you have to have the Empire Strikes
I'm on a
Back.
Star Wars kick, so
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, you have to have the big, it's all gone to pieces. We've lost. Oh, what are we gonna do? Ending of part two to make you want to come back for part three, right? So
Right. So speaking of part two, let's jump into season 2, episode 20, Liars, Guns, and Money, part 2, with friends like these.
what money? It's all gone, but we'll find out.
I'm trying to make a money doesn't matter because it's crackers. But anyway, we'll roll through this. Rigel and Chiana are drowning their sorrows after finding out that the slaves in the auction are sold in lots of 10,000. I don't think Moya's that. Anyway, that's a lot of room. They'll have to buy them all just to get Jothee, so they will have little money left. Dargo, meanwhile, is telling Aaron of his anxiousness at the thought of seeing his son after abandoning him when Moya comes within range of the Katon mines to contact the slavers. However, the lot they want has been sold to a special buyer for triple the asking price. And yes, it's Scorpius.
No.
Yeah, didn't see that one coming, did
Yeah,
you?
right.
He turns out he's left a message for Crichton. He has Dargo's son, and Crichton must surrender himself, or the boy dies. Crichton asks Stark how Scorpius could have gotten the information, and Stark says that he thought he blocked Scorpius' attempt to trace the link from his console. Turns out they led him straight to Jothee.
And now we all hate Stark, but we'll see.
Yeah. Stark had a few seconds, right? Dargo blames Crichton for what happened and says he can't lose Jothee again. Not like this. Dargo leaves and sees a vision of Jothee in his quarters, who says he's failed him again, and he knows what he has to do. Chiana goes to comfort him, and he says that he was prepared to take Crichton by force and give him to Scorpius. He says that Jothee is blood and all he has left of his wife, and asks why that is not enough. Meanwhile, back at the Shadow
See,
Meanwhile,
it's hard, isn't it?
Stupid depository. Meanwhile, back at the Shadow Depository, Scorpius wants Jothee, but Acor tells him that the slavers won't search the lot for just one slave. Nicotero considers things between them settled, but Scorpius doesn't, not until he gets Crichton. He orders Lieutenant Braca to bring Jothee to him at maximum speed, and says Natira can have the other slaves. Meanwhile, Moya is suffering from metal fatigue all of a sudden, and Crichton comes up with a plan since he knows that Jothee is still in transit, and since Scorpius doesn't have him, they still have time. So, another simple plan. He tells the others that they need to break into the depository, and he puts together a crew. They need a Vicorian blood tracker, a Shaying, a Tavlek gauntlet, and the Denetian pirates for the flax. He says that they can pay them using the money they stole from the depository.
Or not.
The money they think they stole from the depository. When suddenly Stark has a fit, saying they're all dead. All the Bannock slaves have been killed. It was as if 1,000 voices suddenly cried. No, wait. Sorry.
9,999 voices all cried out.
And were suddenly silenced. Apparently, since he's a Stakara, he's attuned to the dead. But Crichton says Scorpius would not allow Jothee to die since he's too valuable, and asks everyone to trust him. So, it's okay. At least the boy's alive. Crichton, Aaron, and Dargo leave to start getting the help they need. In his module, Crichton starts taunting Scorpius' neural clone, who says that the task is almost complete. That doesn't sound worrisome at all. Crichton says that now they're sharing, he knows how Scorpius thinks. Jothee is on his way to Scorpius when Natira asks why Crichton is so important to him. Scorpius says that he destroyed his Gamic base, but she says that he wouldn't waste his revenge on anything but a Scaran. Meanwhile, Chiana goes to take a bit of their money when Rigel sneaks up on her, clearly intending to do the same thing.
Of course.
Of course. They agree to a 50-50 split of a small portion, just a little bit.
Just off the top, a little bit.
Yeah, just a taste. But when they look in the crates, they find that all their money is gone. They hear the noise of tearing metal, and Chiana falls to the floor. She's approached by hundreds of creatures and uses a blowtorch to fend them off. However, it's now obvious that the money is alive. Meanwhile, Crichton arrives at his destination to find the Tevlek Bakish sitting on the ground praying. He's no longer wearing his gauntlet. He apparently doesn't practice violence anymore. But the gauntlet is exactly what Crichton wants. Meanwhile, Moya is suffering great pain, and the creatures can't be expelled into space as they're unaffected by the vacuum. Chiana manages to capture one of them for Zan to study and find out how to destroy them. Aaron approaches a Xiang vessel, offering an opportunity for profit. And Dargo rescues two Vicarians, Rorf and Rorg. Rorg is now carrying a child and agrees to Rorf helping Dargo since he saves their lives. Oh yeah, he saved them from some peacekeepers while he was there. Aaron gets to the Xiang, Turak, and convinces them to join them in their attack on the dispensary. Although, since he's injured and can't produce big enough flames, but she says he better do better.
That's
Gotta have
why,
more fire.
yeah, that's why you're there. The big flames.
Yeah. If you can't do flames, you won't need you for the job. Jothee arrives at the depository where Scorpius introduces himself. Jothee asks what he wants, and Scorpius replies that Jothee's father can give him something he very much wants. Back on Moya, Zan's tests reveal that the creatures explode at too high temperature for Moya to handle, but there are over 2,000 on board, and they have to all be killed. Scorpius contacts them, wanting to speak with Dargo, but Zan speaks and accuses him of sabotaging Moya. Scorpius doesn't know what she's talking about, and Stark suddenly steps in and says that Scorpius can kill Jothee if he wants, he's not getting Crichton, and then disconnects the communication. Zan and Shiana are angered by his words, but Stark says that Scorpius can't kill Jothee, and they can't show any sign of weakness. Suddenly, power begins to fail on Moya, and Pilot says if they don't kill the creatures soon, Moya may die. Scorpius and Natira are having some sexy time when he brings up the fact that she seems unconcerned by her loss of money and asks what really was in that container. She says that there are Carrick metallites that lie dormant and look like ingots, but when they awake, they eat through metal. She admits to having intended to kill Scorpius by having the metallites destroy his marauder, but Scorpius doesn't mind since the end result is in his favor, and she says that the Leviathan will die within 8 solar days. Crichton finds Bakisha's gauntlet, and so Bakish agrees to help for the money. Yeah, as you do.
Yeah, if you can't be peaceful and happy, just go for the money.
Yeah, if you're gonna be, it's easier to be happy when you're rich, right?
Exactly.
Meanwhile, Zan has found a solution. They can flood Moya with a Drexen vapor and then ignite it. The flames will destroy the creatures. Pilot is reluctant to burn Moya, but it may be their last hope. Rigel leaves to barter with the Zenitians, while Pilot seals Moya and releases the vapor through the affected areas. More than a ninth of Moya. Zan still has several arms to find another solution, so she gets back to work. Rigel meets the Zenitians only to find out that their commander was deposed by Durka. Remember him? He attempts to bargain with Durka, but when Durka attempts to kill him, Rigel electrocutes him. The Zenitians are impressed and they agree to help. It was a shocking revelation. Zan is desperate to find some way to fight back against the creatures. However, she's out of time as the vapor has been absorbed and Moya's primary systems will soon be in danger. Heading to Pilot's den, she tells him that she will share his and Moya's pain despite the possibility that it may overwhelm her. Stark promises he'll stay by her side and Pilot ignites the vapor. A firestorm surges through Moya's corridors as Pilot and Zan scream in agony. However, it's only on the fraction of the pain that Moya herself is feeling. Crichton returns with Bakesh, only to find Moya on fire. Everyone is okay except for Moya. Later, Crichton and Aaron walk through the burned-out corridors as Aaron tells him that Moya can't starburst and Zan is weeping over Moya's pain. Crichton can't believe that their money did this damage, but Aaron tells him what happened is their fault, and now they have no money to pay the mercenaries, so Scorpius will kill Jothee, but Crichton promises that he won't. The mercenaries are arguing until Rigel comes in with Durka's head and takes control. Dargo asks Aaron where Crichton would have gone at a time like this and says he wants him confined to quarters. Aaron reminds Dargo that John's been trying to help. A transport pod returns and outsteps Jothee. He and Dargo hug in a moment of joy. Dargo apologizes for what Jothee's been through, saying he never stopped thinking about him. Jothee says he never lost hope when Dargo asks how he escaped. Jothee says that Scorpius just let him go. When Aaron asks why, she and Dargo make a sudden, horrific realization. We cut to Crichton, who's approached by Scorpius at the depository. He says that Scorpius wants the wormhole technology and he wants the chip out of his head. Finally, the rift between them is not so great, and he should do what he has to do. He says he wins, to which Scorpius replies, as if there was ever any doubt. To be continued. For a little bit of trivia on this episode, the subtitle comes from the phrase, "With friends like these, who needs enemies?" David Wheeler did not learn of Durka's death until he found out they needed to make a cast for his character's decapitated head. And although Scorpius' nurse appears to have been killed in the previous episode's explosion, a throwaway line of dialogue here establishes that she did survive. So, what do you think of our Empire episode?
Yeah, I mean it's a good episode. It's like you said, the fitting middle of this three-part story. The thing we like about Farscape is they have lots of callbacks to prior stuff, and this episode's got them all over the place. Characters we've seen over the last two seasons, which we'll talk about more here in a minute. Again, we have a very detailed plan, this time by Crichton, to rescue Jothee.
Which,
However,
except for the fire, you got to give him credit. It was a decent plan. It almost worked.
yeah, I mean, it sounded great. And then, unfortunately, as you know how things go when anybody plans anything in a TV show, it kind of goes about as well as you would think. And yeah, I guess towards the end, I love Dargo and Jothee's reaction to being together again. It's like, oh, he finally got his son after talking about it for 2 years. Although I can't help wondering, knowing Scorpius, I'm wondering if Jothee is somehow not, if he's got not that he's got a neurochip because he didn't have time to do that, but is somehow Jothee involved now in Scorpius's plan for Crichton or something? We'll see. But knowing Scorpius, yeah, I'm sure he's got another plan in the plan somewhere.
That's a really good point. I hadn't even thought about the fact that he did have an encounter. Right, he had a conversation with Jothee, so there may be something there that we don't know about yet. I didn't think about that far. I was just thinking of bait. Although he doesn't have the comfy chair with him, so I'm guessing that he probably didn't have time to do too much to his brain. But that doesn't mean he didn't convince him of something in their conversation.
Yeah, because didn't Jothee say like he hated his father for abandoning him? So I'm wondering if that's just enough to like have leverage or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. One of these things is not true, right? The two times Jothee talked about, one was to Dargo and one to Scorpius, he didn't have the same story. So one of these things doesn't match.
Right. So I guess, of course, as these things happen, Scorpius bought the slaves first before our crew could. Not they have any money anyway, so it didn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good idea even if they actually had the money and not a cargo hold of something entirely different.
Yeah, because, he paid triple what they were worth, which coincidentally isn't the triple he got back from Natira for his other goods. So, hey, he comes out ahead, sort of.
Yeah, the only person who's not ahead this time is Dirk. Oh, wait.
Yeah, well, we'll we'll get to that in a second. And of course, as you do, our intrepid snurchers, Rigel and Shiana, both at the same time go to steal some money for themselves and run right into each other. And, argue for a 50-50 split with just a small bit, just a little bit, until they find out that the money has other ideas about things.
Yeah, I was thinking about this because the funny thing to me is if they hadn't robbed that cargo, right? Let's say that they had not shown up there to do this job, the bank job, and Scorpius had gotten his bugs because that was his payment, right?
Hmm.
Then probably not, but there's a small chance they'd have killed Scorpius.
Yeah, if they took over that Marauder and ate through it, which is a smaller ship than Moya, right? So that probably would have been a
Yeah.
lot quicker than 8 days for Moya, right?
Yeah, I mean, now Scorpius has 9 lives, so obviously that's
Yeah.
not going to happen. But he didn't seem to ever die. I mean, he didn't die in the last episode. That was probably the closest they've come yet. So
And then John was still that chip in his head, so what would that have done, right? So
yeah, I guess Scorpius lives on either way.
I guess we'll never know. Or maybe we will. I don't know. We have one more episode to watch. Who knows? And hey, speaking of callbacks, Dirk is back. Hey, oh, never mind. I mean, yeah, that was a nice little twist. Like, oh wow, Durka's now with these guys, but oh, well, never mind. I mean, so is that kind of a waste? Like you're the actor. You're like, hey, cool, I get the call back for this big character who's like a villain, and I can wait. I'm dead. What? And I mean, yeah, it's great closure. I mean, Rigel finally gets revenge for being tortured and imprisoned for 100 years by Durka, but okay.
Yeah, I did like the fact that Roger didn't hesitate at all, though. I mean, it was really quick and oh, there it goes. But I was kind of curious though. Maybe again, as I've mentioned, my memory is definitely not very good. I thought they killed him last time. Did Durka not die the last time we saw? Anyway,
He escaped right on the
is that what he did?
because
Oh,
it was with the Nabari when we first meet them. Well, yeah, when we first meet them, and then he escaped. But I thought, did they blow his ship up or did he escape?
I really feel like they blew him up.
Yeah.
Either way,
Anyway.
he wasn't thinking ahead. Haha, because that was good enough to use twice. And we're not done with the episode, so I may come back to it again.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, at least Rigel, we give him credit. He was prepared not for Durga, but he had his little whatever it was, like death taser or whatever he had, in his pocket there. So he was ready for those guys to turn on him. So hey, Durga, hey, bonus. Yeah.
Yeah, he's come a long way. Usually he's the easy capture, prisoner they need to rescue, and this time he was right out the bat with shocky, stabby death stick. So
Yeah, I mean, kind of only him and Aaron had the easiest time getting their mercenaries. I mean, Aaron just comes in there and says, "Hey, you want some money? Sure, I'm the only one left. Yeah, good enough. Come on.
yeah, but she
Rigel.
probably didn't get her money's worth. So
Yeah, Rigel just offs one dude. And it's like, I'm the boss now. Okay. So I mean, hey, there's easy. And then we got poor Crichton, who had the hardest time, more or less, getting Bakesh to come back with him. I mean, and Dargo had no problems apart from killing two people, which hey, whatever. But yeah, I mean, Bakesh was just not buying it. He's like, no, I'm reformed. I got rid of the gauntlet. I just want to meditate and stop hurting people. Although at the end he finally capitulates, and the great line of the show, it's easier to reform when you're rich.
yeah, which is kind of the Farscape motto. But I do kind of think it's an interesting if you step back and look at Crichton's where he's at right now. Now, granted, he's got a chip in his head, so we'll roll with that. But compare that to like first couple of episodes of season one, Crichton, where you've got the peaceful scientist. I'm a scientist, not a fighter, Crichton, and now you've got a Crichton who's willing to take a guy who's reformed and given up violence and gotten rid of the gauntlet, and he basically convinces him to go back to his drug addicted, violent ways. He kicked him out of AA basically. I mean,
Right.
but overall, I think I may have mentioned at the beginning that this is my favorite. This episode sits higher in my book just because I really like the setup from the past episodes paying off. Hey, remember these guys? And each of them had an episode where they mattered. Now we're gonna make a band out of them, and we're gonna go get all of our friends and we're gonna pull a job. And yeah, that's right up my alley. So this is my favorite part of the whole setup.
Yeah, because were all these people from season one? I know Bakesh was, because that was like early on. That was like our second episode or something. We did like our special episode about don't do drugs with gauntlets or whatever.
Wow, was that far back?
Yeah, and then the Sheyangs were right, because that was like the next episode where Crichton meets the peacekeeper woman and falls in love with her, or whatever. But then I'm trying to think, which I go look it up, but why bother? Because that's no fun. Yeah, was the Rorf and Rorg, Rutro, was that? Were they season one? Was that towards the end, maybe of season one?
Oh man, you've got me like
Uh,
really questioning myself here.
and then the Flax, which we hated, um,
Yeah, that
was
let's not.
I think that was season one too, wasn't
That
it?
wasn't the defense screen goes to 11. I don't know.
That might have been, yeah.
Our,
So, so,
our
so that was season
sometimes
two
our
then, right?
names make it difficult for me to figure out
Yeah.
what we did.
Anyway, I'm sure we can. Someone will correct us. Probably not, but hey, whatever. But yeah, so it's cool they brought back everybody from prior seasons. Like I said, it's old home week. It's old cameo week, which is cool. That's what Farscape does pretty well. They do lots of callbacks, and if you've been invested in the show for almost two seasons like we have, it's just icing on the cake, right? It's great.
Yeah. Sorry, I went down the rabbit hole of looking for the episode about not doing drugs, and I'm not seeing it. So what do I know?
Yeah, yeah, that was like their second podcast. I think that was like maybe episode 3 or 4 or something of season one or something.
Yeah, not worth worrying about.
Yeah, yeah,
Space Roach Motel was I think our second episode. I don't know.
yeah. So it's around there somewhere. Yeah. So maybe it was the next one. Anyway, go
Yeah,
back,
moving on.
go back to the TV feed and go relive past episodes and have some fun.
That's right. Yeah, it's already time for a rewatch of the rewatch.
Yeah. Well, I guess we watched the first two seasons to catch up for the finale next week. So
That's right. Go back to episode one. No, don't. Anyway.
back to the real podcast. So yeah, and more good things about this episode. The interactions with Natira and Scorpius are fun to watch. I guess the actors either had a good chemistry or whatever, but they made it really easy to believe that those two had a long history together. Just with they do some explanation, but most of it's just like the way they act with each other. It's just like they know each other for a long time, and they know what to do, and they know what to expect. They know each other's going to double cross them at any given moment. and it's all like a game of how to like stay ahead of each other.
Yeah, and I'll give the actress. I'll give both of them credit that those two together were just creepy. I mean, that was oof.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing maybe that the budget increase that the one guy got for these episodes. I mean, her makeup or her body cast or whatever you want to call it is amazing.
And her head things and yeah, that whole setup was
Yeah, I mean the contacts for her eyes are just. I was like, whoa, that's really insane. I mean, it's so detailed. Yeah, looks
agreed.
almost like she's like wearing like armor, but it's like
Yeah,
it's like or I guess like some kind of like shell. Okay, well, actually, she's a Scaran, right? She's a Scaran female. I'm guessing. Is that I think what she is? Or they don't really,
I
or
think
they don't really explain that, right?
they don't explain that. I assume she was something else, but it's actually unknown, I guess. So
Yeah, I guess because Scarens have more like that like puppet Muppet kind of face than, but she had like a real like humanoid face. So maybe yeah, maybe it's a different species, but she helped Scorpius with the cooling rod, so she knows something about Scaran biology and something to be able to concoct his cooling rod stuff. So, but hey, maybe we'll find out more about her next episode. Who knows? We don't know. And speaking of that, yeah, so basically at the end, we know Crichton's gonna do what he has to do. The plan's falling apart, as it always does. They have no money to pay these people, so he sneaks off and surrenders himself to Scorpius. And Scorpius, being the nice guy that he is, does actually free Jothee. So hey, surprise! He's at least a person of his word, or Scaran, half Scaran of his word, whatever.
so now I'm sure there's a double cross. Now that you say that,
Yeah, so you see what I mean? Yeah. So I'm like, why would he just let him go when he's got what he wants, right? Because why does he care about what they think about him, right? I mean, so, and also probably Crichton knows that him going off and that he got Jothee free hopefully means that the others probably are going to come try to rescue him because that's what they do. Whether the mercenaries come along or not for free or with the promise of maybe stealing money or something if they help. That's a reach, but what else you got, right? So who knows?
yep. And now we have real stakes set up for the final episode of the three-parter. As you know, somebody flexes their artificial hand and stares out into space through the open bay into the stars.
Yeah, they didn't quite go that far, but yeah,
With the corridor still flaming from the fire.
yeah, because really Moya's stuck, right? I mean, Moya can't starburst, that Aaron said, so she can't escape.
Yeah, they're kind of
Yeah,
on propulsion for now.
but then apparently all Scorpius has at the depository is just a Marauder, so that's probably not any faster than Moya. So
Well,
there's no like command carrier nearby that we know of, right? So they're
yeah,
not.
and John didn't have any trouble reaching it in transport, obviously. So
Yeah.
they're not far off.
So maybe next episode we'll have this really slow space chase where they're trying to escape from each other for like hours. Maybe that's.
And eventually somebody will hyperspace jump through the no wait starburst through the ship.
Yep. Who knows? Anything's possible, right?
That's where they got the idea.
That's right. See, everything's stolen from Farscape. We've proved this before, and now it still stacks up.
Right, like a stack of crackers.
But they don't matter. So. All right. So, as a whole, or at least as of two-thirds of a whole, what do you think? I thought they were pretty good. I mean, I think you said you didn't quite like the first one that much, but I thought it was pretty good. Again, a little too overly complicated, but kind of each one was almost self-contained to some degree, right? I mean, you could have just jumped into the second one and figured out what was going on, but you really have to have watched the prior show, and of course, for this episode, you have to watch the prior seasons because it was called back left and right. But yeah, otherwise, I thought they're two pretty solid episodes. Hopefully, they can bring it home on the third one here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely putting this at the towards the top of the list, right? I mean, we're not to the the lower episodes that we've had over the past two seasons. I don't mean to make it sound like that. I think I liked one less than two, just because if I had to be honest, it's probably Stark. I go back and forth on that character when he's a little Murdoch-y. I have issues. That's a reference to 18 for you young people. But other than that, it is kind of surprising because I'm a sucker for heists, as I mentioned. If they'd Ocean 11 this whole thing up, it'd have been right up my alley. But assembling the mercenaries more than made up for it, because the callback and bringing them in. Hopefully we see them get used in the next episode.
Yeah, because why go to all the trouble to bring them back if you're not going to use them again?
Right.
Of course, again, you brought back Durka, who's there twice, and you kill him off in 5 seconds. So I don't know.
Well, there's third time's the charm.
Yeah, because now you kind of have that like in my head now I got like that like Magnificent Seven kind of thing where like you've gotten your gang of outlaws or whatever together and you're gonna go save the day, right? So I don't know. We'll see if we're right. So speaking of next time we have season 2, episode 21, Liars, Guns, and Money, part 3, Plan B, because plans A and didn't go so well,
I think
and
we're on
the
Plan Z at this point, but yeah,
yeah,
let's roll with Plan B.
yeah, plan X, plan Y, and the hopefully exciting and pulse pounding season 2 finale, episode 22, Die Me Dichotomy. Ooh, alliteration, I love it. So I guess our usual guessing game, plan B. Yeah, okay. Plan B. I guess it's plan A or whatever plan number you're on didn't work. The last 2 episodes, go for something else. Because you got to save Crichton from the evil clutches of Scorpius. And I guess the finale, I looked up dichotomy just to see what the real definition was, to make sure I wasn't misremembering what the word was. And it says that's as a division or contrast between two things that are or are represented as being opposed or entirely different. And that completely describes John and Scorpius. So I'm guessing we get the final resolution of the neural chip in John's head. Hopefully, not the final dealing with Scorpius because he's a great villain, so he's got to continue on. But maybe we at least get rid of the neural chip part of things.
Or not, because maybe at this point, John will imagine Scorpius all on his own. Maybe Scorpius lives in his head rent free now. So,
Yeah, I mean, you got that great name Harvey, so why let that go to waste, right? So it's always fun to have your
oh
your,
yeah,
your main character be semi crazy or
Harvey. That's right.
you have to have Harvey in the Hawaiian shirt keep showing up, right? Because that's just comedy gold when
What was that the name of the rabbit in Donnie Darko, or am I misremembering? Anyway, um,
Yeah, I think that one of the trivia was like, yeah, they named it off of
Donnie
Harvey
Darko.
from,
Okay.
yeah, so
See,
not,
I can't even remember our own trivia, man. Sorry, I knew I remembered it from somewhere. Yeah, I concur. I don't think there's much guessing on the Plan B thing. I think that's exactly what we're going to have is the what's left of the crew and the our mercenaries are going to storm the castle and rescue John. And then, like you say, the season wrap up with the Daimyo dichotomy makes sense. So I concur.
yeah. Although given how season 1 ended with a cliffhanger season finale, even though they didn't call it like a part 1 or part 2 kind of thing, but this is the time of TV where they were doing season-ending cliffhangers to get you to come back for the next season. So maybe they won't wrap it up.
No, well, yeah, what I would expect we'll definitely have something that shakes up the status quo of our crew between seasons, right? There's got to be. I don't mean that somebody's going to leave. I just mean we have to have a major change. I mean, if nothing else, we need a chance to do a wardrobe change, right? That's what they did between season 1 and season 2. So,
Yeah. Well, I'm sure Stark will leave because he always does. So we'll see.
well, that way he has to go back to the insane asylum so they can break him out anytime they need him for a mission.
Yeah. Or now they know he can just reform himself. They may just throw him out the airlock and okay, hey, you'll see you in a couple days. But no, our crew would never do that. They're nice. Well, sort of. All right, so that is your homework for next time. And I guess we'll do our exciting season review where we rank every episode. No, from top to bottom.
It's actually a draft. We have to draft our favorite episodes in order.
Hey, you never know. We get to the 88 episodes, maybe we'll do a quick draft of the top 10. And if we remember that in 2 years from now, when we get to that point, we'll do that. But we'll see.
I'll have to refer to notes. I can't remember last week, much less episode 1. Anyway,
Yeah, at this point, I can't remember what I did yesterday, much less what I'm going to do like months from now. So yeah, we'll see. All right, so that is your homework, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye. Meanwhile, Xana manages to leave the tier just before Scorpius gets to her, and they hug. Not Aaron and not Natira, and Anyway, you get the picture. I'll edit that out. Anyway, that's going in the blooper section. Okay.